Today's guest, we have had her a couple times before, and I was so excited to bring her back. She was part of the new documentary. You may or may not have seen it over on Paramount Plus, Devotion, Obedience, or Betrayal, talking about Gloriavale, which her grandfather founded. She grew up in it, left when she was very young, 17, I believe. We'll get into the specifics, but I'm really looking forward to hearing her whole perception of this documentary. Was very interesting because they had people who were currently in and people who had left. Thanks so much for coming back, Lilia Tarawa.
Oh, kia ora, Shalise. Tēnā koe. Hello, and welcome to everyone here. I'm so happy to be back on the show talking about something which is very close to my heart, sharing my story, but also bringing awareness to an important topic. Like, it's so important we have these conversations, isn't it?
Yes, because the last documentary that was made on Gloriavale was years ago, right? Like over a decade ago.
Yeah, it was. It was a really long time ago. It has been a while, and this is this is really new footage that's come out in Devotion. So for the very first time, Gloriavale have decided to open their doors again to the media, and so there's a lot of voices on there from people who are currently living inside the community, and some perspectives from there, as well as survivors who haven't spoken before publicly to the media, who are sharing their stories and platforming their voices. So
Yeah.
it's really fresh material, and there's a lot of new information in there, which is really interesting to me as someone who likes to think I'm quite acquainted with the topic, to see that there's always new stuff coming out that I'm like, wow, did that really happen? I can't believe that. So that was very interesting to me as a survivor rewatching Devotion.
Yeah, maybe we start there. Some of the things that you were surprised by.
For me personally, it was really nostalgic for me to see people who I loved, who I grew up with. For example, Leanne, she's one of the older women. She's my aunt. And then Rachel, she features a lot throughout. She's the one who said, I have all these children because I love it.
Yeah.
So Rachel's my cousin, and Lani, or Leanne, is her mother. So it was so nice to see those people, right? I haven't seen their faces for years, because I left Gloriavale 2009 now, so it's been a while, and you're shunned, you're ostracized, so you don't get to see these people. And so there's that piece. As a survivor, I'm like, wow, these are the people I grew up with. And it's almost like, it's really sad to see some of the things that they believe and some of the things that they stand by and some of the agendas that they're protecting when it comes to their way of life, especially in the face of, there's so much evidence now that it's incontrovertible that this place is a harmful place. And yet, how can you sit on TV and continue to defend your way of life when it has very clearly harmed people and been through the court systems?
Yeah.
And there's multiple charges of sexual that have come out of there. There's been slavery charges, and we've won landmark cases in the New Zealand courts for granting employment status to first 3 young men and then 6 women who grew up in Gloriavale. These being really landmark cases. And for you to still stand there and defend your way of life and say the past is the past, without truly acknowledging the harm that it has caused or continues to cause, is really interesting to me. The narrative is that we've reformed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest questions that the documentary tries to grapple with. This idea that, well, we can continue with our way of life because we've changed. The past is the past, and we'll leave it there, so to speak. We've got a new leader now. The leaders who are responsible for XYZ have now stepped down.
Yeah.
Some of that is a real challenge for me.
For those who haven't seen the documentary, explain, because you grew up in it, your grandfather founded it, kind of what it is and what it was like living there.
So I was born into the Gloriavale Christian community in Cust, Rangiora. It's just outside of Christchurch, New Zealand. And my grandfather was an evangelical pastor. His name was Neville Cooper, and he was preaching over in Australia, very charismatic preacher. They would set up these big camps, and he had this campaign called Voice of Deliverance. So he was the voice of deliverance. He claimed to be a son of God, and he would go into the outback and he would convert the Aboriginal people, and he would bring Jesus to the masses. He was practicing immersion baptism, and he was highly influenced by Billy Graham, who was an evangelical preacher in the States. So eventually Neville came over to New Zealand. He was invited as a pastor to join a church over here, and he inevitably had some disagreements with fellow pastors. And this was really interesting, and I will just pop back into something that I heard on devotion, because his daughter Grace and Hope talk about these early days of Neville Cooper. They say, well, he couldn't find anywhere that was living like the New Testament word of God and living like Jesus wanted us to. And so their story is that this is what started Gloriavale, and this was the beginnings of this church, that Neville couldn't find anyone who agreed with his interpretation of the Bible and agreed with everything that he thought a church should look like. So he wanted communal living, and he wanted to bring people together to share their money and communal bank accounts, wear all of the same clothing. And it was slowly with each aspect of their lifestyle that they became more and more enmeshed with each other. So I grew up, we would like work in communal kitchens. I lived in one room with my family in a hostel. I wore a full length uniform and a white cap. The white cap was a sign of submission and subservience and complete obedience to God and to man. All my schooling was at this place as well. We moved eventually to the West Coast, because on the West Coast, there was more land. And the West Coast, if New Zealand terrain at all, it is very secluded. So you've got one road into a property that is nestled between the Southern Alp Mountains and a lake. And so there's one way to access this property. The closest township is about an hour away. For people who are born there and people who are raised there, like myself, you really don't go outside the community for anything other than maybe a school trip, or maybe like to get dental care, or if you need glasses from an optometrist or something. So your exposure to the outside world is really very, very limited, not only in the beliefs that you have, but also in the actual physical location of this place. You are very separate from the rest of society. And this is what Neville Cooper was teaching. So this is how I was raised. So I lived on this compound for 18 years of my life. There was nothing else I really knew. And that was probably what my schooling was there. I slept in a room with my family. I worked in the kitchens. I worked in the laundries. I worked in the sewing room. We had all the preschool was there, all my primary school, all my high school. Everything was located in this one compound.
It feels very much like the FLDS of New Zealand. Have you watched the recent documentary, Trust Me?
I haven't, but I looked at it last night on YouTube and I was thinking I should watch this. It's a little bit, as a survivor, you're kind of like, oh God, how much exposure can I take to this kind of thing? Like, it's happened again. Like, here we go. It's another one.
Yeah.
Which is why so many of us are speaking out about this, right? Because like it's just continues to happen over and over, and we see it again and again, this narrative being repeated.